In Washington, reports emerging from U.S. media outlets suggest that President Donald Trump's administration is actively pursuing congressional approval for a significant military deal with Israel. The package, valued at approximately $6 billion, is said to include a major expansion of Israel's air and ground capabilities. According to these reports, the proposed sale would deliver 30 Apache attack helicopters at a cost of $3.6 billion, effectively doubling Israel's current arsenal of the aircraft. In addition, the package features 3,200 assault vehicles for the Israeli Defense Forces, worth $1.9 billion. The timing of this request is notable. It comes just days before the annual United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, where the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza is expected to dominate global debate. The UN Secretary General António Guterres has raised alarm over the scale of destruction, declaring in stark terms, "What we are witnessing in Gaza is horrendous. It is the worst level of death and destruction that I've seen in my time as Secretary General, probably in my life." As diplomatic maneuvering unfolds in New York, events on the ground in Gaza continue to spiral. The Israeli military has announced that it will pursue its campaign against Hamas with what it described as unprecedented force. Central to the operation is Gaza City, where hundreds of thousands of civilians are caught in the crossfire. Israeli officials say they have urged residents to move southward, and they claim that since late August, roughly 480,000 Gazans have fled in that direction. Yet for many, the southern areas have offered little in the way of refuge. Palestinian media reported that the Israeli military detonated several explosive-laden vehicles in neighborhoods of Gaza City, while simultaneously demolishing homes and public buildings. Those who heeded the call to move south to areas described by Israel as humanitarian zones now face a struggle for survival. In Al-Masi, located in the city of Khan Yunis, displaced families described conditions that verge on unlivable. One resident explained their ordeal with raw clarity. "We escaped the bombardment. You see how death is everywhere. Our lives have become extremely difficult. There's no tents, no water, and no food. We are living on the street. We don't know where to go anymore." Another displaced Palestinian gave an equally harrowing account. "What we went through was daunting. The hunger, the lack of food, of money and work. Death follows us everywhere, bombing wherever we turn. When we went back north, we stayed for a month, and then they bombed us, so we escaped. We're extremely burned out and tired of displacement. 4 whole days on the road. We went all over Gaza. We don't have the money to rent or money to eat. Hunger is killing us. We have nothing." These testimonies underline the growing desperation in Gaza, where basic humanitarian needs, shelter, food, clean water, remain beyond reach for vast numbers of people. To explore the significance of Washington's proposed arms sale, BBC News spoke to Professor Stephen Zunes, Director of Middle East Studies at the University of San Francisco. Asked about the reported $6 billion package, Zunes offered critical perspective. It's something that the Trump administration has done before, and the Biden administration before that, asking for additional arms transfers on top of the $3.3 billion annual military aid and the $17 billion of supplemental military aid that has gone to Israel since the start of the war nearly 2 years ago. It is certainly controversial with the American people. Close to 2/3 of Americans, according to public opinion polls, oppose additional military aid to Israel. But the leadership of both the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress seem to be supporting it. And though there will be some left-wing Democrats who will probably be voting against it, it looks very unlikely that Congress will exercise its authority to block the sale. This statement highlights a central paradox. While American public opinion leans heavily against additional military aid to Israel, bipartisan leadership in Congress remains largely committed to sustaining and even expanding support. Attention then turned to Israel's justification for its military offensive in Gaza. The government in Tel Aviv has consistently argued that operations are aimed at securing the release of hostages held by Hamas. But Zunes cast serious doubt on this rationale. He noted Hamas agreed to free the hostages back in January as part of the second phase of the ceasefire agreement that in return for Israel releasing some Palestinian prisoners and withdrawing its forces and agreeing to a permanent ceasefire, Hamas would indeed release all the hostages. And the fact that Israel broke that deal and has rejoined the war is why you're seeing so many Israelis on the streets protesting right now, because they recognize that the hostages' lives are being put into jeopardy by this new military operation. So there's serious doubts within Israel and elsewhere whether this offensive on Gaza City is really about freeing the hostages at all. This perspective helps explain the wave of demonstrations inside Israel itself. Protesters accuse their own government of jeopardizing the hostages' lives by resuming the war rather than adhering to the terms of earlier agreements. With the United Nations General Assembly imminent, Gaza is guaranteed to dominate proceedings. European nations in particular have signalled growing impatience with Israel's conduct. Several have hinted that they may use the forum to push forward the recognition of a Palestinian state. But Professor Zunes remains sceptical about the likely impact of such measures. As long as the United States continues to provide the military, diplomatic and financial support for Israel's war effort, it's very unlikely that these diplomatic initiatives will go very far. Just yesterday, the United States, for the sixth time, vetoed an otherwise unanimous UN Security Council resolution addressing the conflict in Gaza. Still, Zunes acknowledged that momentum in international opinion is shifting. When you do have a growing consensus in the international community, including from countries like Britain, like France, like other European countries who've traditionally been supportive of Israel, it does send a message that Israel has gone too far in terms of its violation of international humanitarian law. We are talking about a humanitarian crisis of enormous proportions that Israel is largely responsible for. And I think because of that, we're going to see increasing efforts by global civil society and other governments to pressure Israel. But again, it may not be enough if they know they have essentially an umbrella protecting them. Israel has this unconditional support from Washington, the most influential country in the world still. This analysis underlines a persistent reality in international diplomacy. No matter how widespread global criticism becomes, Israel's actions are shielded by the United States diplomatic umbrella. The proposed US arms deal also comes at a delicate moment in US domestic politics. For Trump, the decision to push through another major military transfer to Israel reinforces his administration's alignment with long-standing US policy, but it also risks exacerbating divisions at home. Polls consistently show that support for unconditional military aid to Israel is slipping among younger Americans, Democrats, and even independents. At the same time, Israel's increasingly aggressive posture in Gaza has raised alarms internationally, not only among traditional critics, but also among allies. The European Union, while cautious, has shown growing frustration with civilian casualties and the humanitarian collapse in Gaza. France and Britain, for example, have both issued stronger than usual condemnations of Israeli tactics in recent weeks. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General's deeply personal words reflect the sense of alarm in international institutions. António Guterres' warning that Gaza represents the worst destruction he has ever seen as Secretary General places moral pressure squarely on the shoulders of world leaders gathering in New York. Amid this political and diplomatic theatre, it is the ordinary civilians of Gaza who bear the brunt. Their testimonies speak to exhaustion, hunger and despair. As one resident expressed, "We don't know where to go anymore." Another said with searing simplicity, "Hunger is killing us. We have nothing." Such accounts challenge official narratives, whether from Israel, the US or elsewhere. They reveal the everyday impact of military campaigns and political decisions made far beyond Gaza's borders. As the United Nations General Assembly convenes, two tracks of reality run in parallel. On one side, high-level debates over recognition, aid packages and diplomatic resolutions. On the other, desperate families in Gaza wandering from one devastated neighborhood to another in search of food, water and safety. President Trump's administration may succeed in securing congressional approval for the proposed $6 billion arms deal with Israel. Yet this will not silence the questions posed by millions worldwide about the morality and consequences of sustaining Israel's military machine in the midst of what many are calling one of the worst humanitarian crises in recent history. As Professor Zunes observed, Israel continues to rely on a powerful protector, the unwavering support of Washington. And as long as that shield remains intact, international condemnation may continue to fall short of altering the trajectory of events on the ground.